Okay, welcome to week 14. So this week we're going to do several things. First of all, you're going to read chapter 17, foreign policy, and then you're going to get into the Constitution a little bit. Well, you're going to answer two of the critical thinking questions from chapter 17, question 18 and question 19, with 3 complete sentences each at least, and then you're going to get into the Constitution a little bit with a little bit of a foreign policy assignment. Believe it or not, foreign policy, as we might expect, is covered in the Constitution. That's part of governing. We're not just some independent island who never interacts with other nations, obviously. We're all over the place. Okay, then also, you're going to have a little project. I want you to read the Northwest Ordinance. Have you ever heard of that? I hadn't really much either. I mean, I heard it mentioned, but I didn't really know what it was. Over the weekend, I listened to a podcast, Mark Levin, who is caustic, a know-it-all, and just does not sound like a friendly person, but is an attorney and is brilliant. He interviewed Larry Arnn. Larry Arnn is a PhD, I think. He might be an attorney. It's Dr. Larry Arnn, whatever his education is. I need to look that up. Anyway, he is the president of Hillsdale College in Michigan. And Larry Arnn says that for decades in the United States Code, which is the book of federal statutes, it's multiple books because, we have tons of laws. At the beginning, they would always publish, Congress would publish in the United States Code, the Declaration of Independence, we know about that, the Articles of Confederation, we know about that, the Northwest Ordinance, we don't know much about that, if anything, and the Constitution, because those are the foundational laws. What is the Northwest Ordinance? In July of 1787, we needed something to govern this new territory from the western boundary of the United States into Ohio and beyond to the Pacific Ocean. How are we going to govern this? How are we going to admit states? How are we going to have governors? How are we going to have representatives? All of that is contained in the Northwest Ordinance, and you're going to have a little assignment where you look at that. But also, I want you to pay particular attention to Article 3 of the Northwest Ordinance. And remember, the Northwest Ordinance comes into law in July of 1787. What's going on in 1787? All those delegates from May of 1787 are still in Philadelphia, sweating it out in the humid Philadelphia summer, trying to piece together and write a constitution, because the Articles of Confederation is an unmitigated disaster. So this is a very important time in U.S. history, and a very important time, some of the most important times in U.S. government. So Article 3 of the Northwest Ordinance, that says the means of education shall forever be encouraged. Education is phenomenally important to the founders. This might mean that it should be important to us. They created something. The Declaration of Independence is going to have its 250th anniversary next year. They created things that lasted hundreds of years. These are brilliant men. Obviously, they were not perfect men. Obviously, many of them have very public flaws. However, they were brilliant and they recognized the importance of education. Education does not come from scrolling on your phone. I really encourage you to limit that and become consumers of reputable, scholarly news and information. But aside from that, in Article 3 of the Northwest Ordinance, it says, the utmost good faith shall always be observed towards the Indians. Their lands and property shall never be taken from them without their consent, and in their property rights and liberty they shall never be invaded or disturbed unless in just and lawful wars authorized by Congress. That's 1787. That's Thomas Jefferson in 1787, Northwest Ordinance. Enter Andrew Jackson in 1830. The Indian Removal Act was passed by Congress and then signed by President Jackson in May of 1830. By December of 1830, President Jackson is giving a report to Congress. And he says, So we have the Indian Removal Act signed into law in May of 1830, and by December, President Jackson is reporting to Congress that in relation to the removal of the Indians beyond the white settlements is approaching a happy consummation. Jackson declared that removal would incalculably strengthen the southwestern frontier, clearing Alabama and Mississippi of their Indian populations, he said, would enable those states to advance rapidly in population, wealth, and power. And the Indians' removal, truly, they were removed. And they were moved to states with climates completely foreign to what they had had. They were not compensated for their land. So from 1787 in the Northwest Ordinance to the Indian Removal Act in 1830, things rapidly changed and not for the better. So I want you to understand, Abraham Lincoln told us the government is by the people, for the people, of the people. This requires that the people be informed. So you're doing that. You're going to college, you're taking these classes, but make sure that you have a lifetime commitment to being informed so that when you vote, it's from an informed position and it can be impactful. And when you talk to your friends, they're all going to know those 2-second sound bites from scrolling. That's empty. You, though, if you put in the work to truly become informed, to truly educate yourself, to read good books, consume reputable news, understand things, as you put in that work, you become powerful and impactful. You become someone people listen to, and you positively influence your sphere of everybody around you, and that spills over and positively influences the country. So that's my plug. That's something I hope you take away from this class, is to be informed. All right, reach out to me with questions and have a great week.